Hello, everybody. Welcome to Zone Defense. Be sure to follow us on Spotify at Zone Defense Podcast and on Twitter at Zone Defense Pod. We also want to say thank you to all of our new viewers from our last few episodes. However, a lot of you are not yet subscribed, so be sure to hit that subscribe button if you have not already and smash that notification bell because it really helps out our channel a lot. Also, drop a comment down below and let us know your thoughts on today's topics. Today, Chris, Rowan, and I will be discussing the new head coaching hires in our first off-season episode. How's it going, guys?
I'm good, Drew. Like you said, this is our first real off-season episode, a topic we've been wanting to do for a while. Now that all the head coaching hires are officially announced, I can't wait to run through them with you guys and debate which one was the best.
Yeah, I totally agree with Roman. You know, it's been one of the most wild years in terms of coaching hires and fires, so it's going to be where you guys have these different coaches ranked when we go over the power rankings, just for which one is what we think is the best hire, at least. But yeah, let's just jump into the news and notes so we can get into it. We'll start with the J.J. Watt news. Obviously, he was released this week from Houston. I think actually a pretty good move by them to let him kind of get out before the rest of the crowd. You know, I think that is a pretty good move, but also a pretty dumb move by them. They probably could have got something for him, but you know, it's just an organization that's in a total rebuild, and we'll be talking about them later as well. So it'd be very interesting to see what you guys have to say about their situation. But for me, I think I'm just going to jump into what I think the most interesting destination for him is, and I think it's Cleveland Browns. I think they desperately need another pass rusher outside of Myles Garrett, and obviously J.J. Watt instantly gives them that. I think it's the perfect destination. I think it's the team he's going to end up signing with. So, but we'll have to see about that. I'm not 100% sure on that. Roman, I'll get your opinion on this, and then Drew can follow. Where do you think he's going to go?
I would like to see him in Pittsburgh because he'd be playing with his brothers, but they're in a huge cap situation right now, so it's probably unlikely. Green Bay could be another option because J.J. Watt went to Wisconsin, obviously. As a Lions fan, I don't want to see that either. So like you, I will go with Cleveland. I think that would be a great destination for him because the Browns are on the come-up. Watt wants to go to a contender. He established that already. All three of those options will be contenders in the next few years, but I think Cleveland or Green Bay would probably give him the best bet to win now. I also heard Tennessee was in that mix, so another interesting option as well. But when I saw the Cleveland possibility, I like that idea right away. What about you, Drew?
Yeah, I was trying to find out. Here we go. I mean, you're telling me this doesn't look sick. I mean, you already know where I'm going to go. You're already telling me that doesn't look awesome. Just J.J. Watt in the Browns uniform. I mean, that looks pretty good. I think he just looks good in the brown and orange and white. So obviously, I am wearing a Bengals Joe Burrow jersey, so maybe it's a conflict of interest here. But I do like the Browns a lot. I think J.J. Watt would fit in right there. I saw some people comparing it to when way back in the 90s when Reggie White signed with the Packers, and it gave him legitimacy. And of course, the Packers ended up winning the Super Bowl with Brett Favre. I don't know. I don't think Watt's that good, at least right now. However, I still think it would really legitimize their team. Cleveland's been a dumpster fire the last few years, obviously, but last year they really were on the come up. And now just getting a marquee free agent. I know he's not the J.J. Watt he was a couple years ago, but he's still a good player. Getting him would be awesome. I still think Green Bay is probably his second best option just because, like you said, Roman, he's got that Wisconsin connection. I think that would be interesting too, even though we are Lions fans, it wouldn't be great. But most likely when the Lions are good again, J.J. Watt will either be retired or injured or whatever. So it probably wouldn't affect us too much. But yeah, I would say the Browns. I think those are the three big teams. I did see a Titans rumor out there too. Because of the Mike Vrabel connection. Vrabel used to be with the Texans. That would be interesting too. I'd like that. I think the Browns and the Titans would be the two teams I'd really like to see him on. But obviously the Browns are my number one pick.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think the Browns make for the most interesting destination. And I know you said he's not the same player he was, but he's still one of the best pass rushers in the league when he's healthy. And, I mean, he's had some tough injuries. They're not really something that's chronic. He's just had a couple really – he just plays really hard out there. I mean, you see it, and sometimes his body has broken down from that before. But I think him being across from Garrett maybe takes a little bit of the pressure off of him to go absolutely insane every single play and will help him maybe stay healthy. I mean, that's a possibility as well. So I think him and Garrett make for one of the best pass rush duos and potentially league history, to be honest. I mean, this is two top 5 guys in the league right now, I would say. So I think having them both together, I'd feel bad for the rest of that division. So,
and I think he should go somewhere with like a Garrett or another legit elite pass rusher rather than being the guy where he has to be out there every snap, because that'll increase the likelihood he's going to get hurt, right? He's going to get banged
Right.
up, especially injuries don't go away as you get older. But if he goes on a team like the Browns, who got a guy like Myles Garrett, or even like the Steelers, who got a guy like TJ Watt, it's going to really help him out. So that's why I don't like, he's not going to Detroit or a team that has zero pass rush. He's going to be the guy, because I don't think that would work well for him. So he should go to a team like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. We'll jump into the next news here. So we've got a couple quarterbacks potentially on the move. Carson Wentz. It seems to be clear that he's not going to be back with the Eagles this year. They're trying to do everything in their power to trade him. I mean, they want multiple first-round picks, but I think they should settle for like a second-rounder. I think that would be honestly a pretty fair trade, especially with this contract. Maybe they get a first-rounder as well. That would be probably best case scenario for him, because let's face it, he wasn't very good last year, but he still got some talent. We're seeing a lot of rumors for the Bears potentially going after him. It seems like he wants to go to the Colts really bad. The Colts aren't quite as interested as the Bears are, but he apparently has no interest in the Bears, which makes zero sense. It's the starting quarterback job. If you want to be a starting quarterback in the league, beggars can't be choosers. He's not going to start with the Eagles, whether it's most likely going to be Jalen Hurts, or potentially, if they decide to go after a quarterback in the draft, which I think is unlikely, but a possibility, I don't think Carson Wentz will be their quarterback next year. So I think he needs to take whatever he can get, and the Bears, he should be thankful that the Bears want to trade for him, in my opinion. That's just my opinion there. We'll have to see how it ends up working out. But Deshaun Watson, it's kind of the same story as it has been. He wants out. They don't want to trade him. He's not willing to be flexible. Apparently, maybe in a trade, they want a ton. I saw a rumor that ended up not being true, which was the 3 first-rounders plus Christian McCaffrey from the Carolina Panthers for Deshaun Watson. Seems like a bit too much to give up for just Deshaun Watson, but, I mean, you got to go get your guy if you want him. So, I mean, but that ended up being a false rumor. I'm wondering if they actually did offer Christian McCaffrey plus something else. I think that is possible. That could be a true part to that room. I don't think it was 3 firsts and McCaffrey, but I think maybe the 3 firsts by themselves, maybe a couple firsts plus Teddy, or 1 Teddy and and Christian McCaffrey or something like that would be a deal that would make some sense for the Panthers. Because I mean, I know CMC is an awesome player, but his contract now, I mean, he's getting paid over $15 million a year. He's one of the highest paid running backs in the league. And I mean, he's a great player, but he is a running back. So I mean, it would make some sense for them if they can capitalize and get Deshaun Watson. I would much rather have him than the likes of Christian McCaffrey and Teddy Bridgewater. I think he brings a lot more value to the offense. But Drew, I'll let you go first on this one. You touch up on either one of these quarterback situations. Do you have anything you're predicting or anything like that for either one of these guys?
It doesn't seem. I don't really have a lot to talk about with Watson, because it's really, like you said, no really new news in comparison to the last few weeks. I do think it's likely that he's if he does get traded, he's going to go to an NFC team, not an AFC team. It seems like the Texans, if they do end up trading him, they're pretty adamant that it's going to be NFC, not AFC, not just AFC South, but not the AFC in general. So that'll be interesting to see. But I really wanted to focus on Wentz because he's got a lot of negative headlines surrounding him right now. A lot of the leadership and the entitlement issues that plagued him throughout his Philadelphia career are still plaguing him now. It seems like he thinks he's a lot better of a quarterback than he really is. A lot of people, I know, Chris, you mentioned Big Cat was going after him on Twitter. A lot of people are going after him on Twitter right now because he doesn't want to go to the Bears. I mean, I get it, I guess, but again, I think in terms of QBR last season, he was the second worst quarterback in the league, but behind only Sam Darnold. Obviously, a lot of potential there. He was an MVP candidate not too long ago, but at the same time, he didn't play well last year, and he got benched, so he really can't be talking that much. And he's also got injury issues that have plagued him throughout his career. So it's one of those things, like you said, Chris, where he should just shut up and get traded rather than he's not like he's LeBron James. He's not Tom Brady. He's not one of those guys. It's like, dude, just chill out. Go to Chicago. It's a great sports city. It's a great football town. What's your problem? I would like him preferably, and this isn't just because I'm a Lions fan, I would prefer him to go to the Colts because I think that would be the best position for him to succeed. The rumored offer on the table right now is 2 second-round picks for Carson Wentz. And honestly, I mean, that's not a bad deal. I don't know what the Bears have offered. I think the rumor was like Tariq Cohen and like some picks and something, maybe Nick Foles, I think it was. And honestly, I'd rather have 2 seconds. I mean, we've seen time year and year again. I think the 2 seconds would be in like the 50s, and I think last year the 50th picks were like Cam Akers and so a few other like really solid players. So I think if I'm the Eagles, like let's do that trade. Let's get this thing done rather than drowning it out, and making yourself look bad, making your franchise look bad, everything like that. So I would like him to go to the Colts rather than the Bears too. But Wentz, he's just not looking really good in the situation either. But Roman, what do you think?
I'll touch on Watson first. I think he'll get traded eventually. It'll be a long, drawn out process. I wouldn't be surprised that even if we see Watson still on the Texans roster by the draft, I think he could get traded after the draft or when he starts to actually hold out from preseason or training camp stuff. So I think that's possible. Wentz, I do think he'll also get traded. I like your analysis on the Colts. I think they're the best destination for him. Last week there was rumors of like David Montgomery saying like cryptic tweets about not playing in Chicago anymore, but apparently he's not in a deal. Neither is Cohen. So who knows what the Bears are going to offer. I do think you can actually get a first for Carson Wentz, though. They're asking too much by trying to get multiple firsts, but I do think if you're the Colts, I would happily give up the first rounder that they have because it's late in the first round. It's normally a crapshoot at the end anyways. And honestly, I think they're just a quarterback away. I don't think they have many holes to fill. So if I'm the Colts, I would happily give up the first rounder that they have this year for Wentz, maybe a little bit more, but I think the Eagles can't be picky anymore with what they wanted to accept and decline. They got to take whatever offer is the best because it's not going to get any better with Wentz still in Philadelphia. I think he's mentally ready to leave. He's checked out already, and I think he needs to go into a new change of scenery. And I think obviously the Indianapolis or the Bears would be the best opportunity for him.
I think honestly, I'd even rather have 2 second-round picks than a first-round pick, especially this year with the limited scouting, limited draft no, it's gonna be virtual draft combine, all that stuff. You're really not gonna. There might be a lot of busts this year in the first round, so I'd rather have the second-round picks. That's just me.
I mean, that's fair. I think I would take the first rounder, but both deals I think are pretty fair for Carson Wentz in my opinion. But yeah, we'll jump into our next points really quick so we can get to the coaching hires because obviously we're going to touch up on the Philly situation. So I'm sure Wentz won't be the last. This won't be the last time we mention Wentz today. But Dak and the Cowboys are not close to a long-term deal. This situation's been kind of messy too. I wonder what ends up happening. I still think they do re-sign him, but you could see a different team make a late push for him at some point. I'm not sure who, but it'd be interesting to see if a team like the Bears, if a deal, or the Colts, if the Wentz deal, if Watson doesn't want to come there or whatever, that could be an option potentially to sign for a team with a lot of cap space. So interesting to see what'll happen with that. And then lastly, we'll touch up on the AR Kenny G franchise tag news. I mean, for AR, it seems like maybe a tag and trade situation for the Bears. Doesn't really make sense, especially if you're trying to bring in Carson Wentz. Allen Robinson would probably be a good guy to keep around. And surprisingly enough, even with Wentz's inaccuracies last year, he's probably the best quarterback Allen Robinson would have had if it ends up coming to fruition there in Chicago. And he does sign the tag and stay there. I think it would be his best quarterback. Really not saying a whole lot. Kenny G, seems like the Lions are most likely going to franchise tag him. I think they should sign him long term. Obviously, you know my opinion on that. But at the same time, I mean, it is what it is. We'll have to see. I don't really know. I don't really know why he would want to come back because we're going to be so god darn awful this year. So it really doesn't make a lot of sense for him, in my opinion, to sign a long-term deal. So maybe he just takes the tag money and then goes next year. We'll have to see how that works out as well. And then lastly, this could be another potential destination for those 3 teams we listed at J.J. Watt would be Denver's declining of Von Miller's option as well. So another really good pass rusher with another injured really good pass rusher potentially on the market. So could be if one of those teams wanted J.J. Watt, doesn't end up landing him, they could go after Von Miller if they're looking to add a pass rusher. So another high-end guy on the market. And
Denver might be even in the conversation for Watson too. So they can bring in some good free agents or trades in the next couple of weeks or so.
Yeah, they're definitely a team to look out for. They haven't been talked about a lot this free agency so far, at least with some of these rumors, but definitely a team not to be slept on in the Deshaun Watson rumors, because they've been kind of there the whole time and they haven't been really talked about a lot. But,
Yeah.
getting rid of Miller could open up some cap space to potentially make things more interesting. But you think about if they get Watson, we'll talk about this really quick because we probably won't talk about it later at all. But if the Broncos were to get Watson, I mean, you think about with the weapons they got right now, that's a scary offense. I mean, you got Cortland Sutton, you got Jerry Jeudy, you got KJ Hamler, Noah Fant, Melvin Gordon, Philip Lindsay most likely will be back. That's a pretty sweet offense, man. I think that would be one of the better offenses in the league, and actually somewhat competitive with the Chiefs in terms of at least offense in the AFC West. But
yeah, I think it would make the AFC West the second best division to the NFC West when you got the Chiefs, the Chargers, and the Broncos, and even the Raiders aren't just a bad team. They're still a decent team. Yeah, that would make that division really interesting. And there's a lot of rumors too about Watson to the Raiders, so it'd be interesting to see where he ends up. But again, I'm still buying that if he does get traded, he's going NFC. But it would be really entertaining if he goes to the Broncos or the Raiders. I agree. Now we're going to jump into the coaching hires. But before we do that, real quick, I wanted to ask you guys about Eric Bieniemy because he was the hot name on the market here going into the coaching carousel. And I think this, at least in my memory, this is the first time the quote-unquote number one coaching hire or coaching candidate just wound up with zero job at all. So there's a lot of theories. A lot of people have opinions about why that was the case. I just wanted to real quick get your guys' thoughts. Why do you think Bieniemy ended up just sticking with Kansas City?
I'll start it off. I mean, for me, he definitely deserves a head coaching job. There's no question about it. He's been fantastic throughout it. I mean, at least his tenure in KC. I mean, their offense is incredible. I'm sure it has partly to do with Andy Reid, but I know he's a big part of why they're so successful. So he definitely deserves a head coaching job. But you can't ignore the fact that he's had a history of having problems, outside of the league. He's not the first person to do it, so that's why I think he does deserve a second chance. But I think that's why some teams are shied away from him. I think there's multiple guys on this list that he probably should have been hired over, but maybe they were scared away from some of his previous history with run-ins with the law, trouble throughout his life. I would say just in terms of making some mistakes and stuff, which, like I said, I'm not gonna totally trash him for, but I think that's part of the reason why he didn't get hired. We'll have to see if that changes soon. I know the Chiefs just extended him, but that doesn't mean that a team can't come calling down the road, and I think they will at some point. I think he's gonna end up getting a head coaching job once one of these guys or one of the mediocre coaches in the league ends up inevitably failing.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with all of that, but I do want to add, however, that for multiple reasons, I think Bieniemy, as you said, should be a head coach one day, but I think he needs to go somewhere where it's kind of already ready-made for him. I know, like, the last team to hire a coach was Houston, and I think if I was Bieniemy, I wouldn't want to coach there. It was the most, like, undesirable place. So I think many people were, I guess, attacking the Texans for not hiring Bieniemy, but at the same time, I wouldn't want to coach there either. And I think ultimately the best option for Bieniemy is just being patient and waiting in Kansas City, because I don't think Reid will be with them for much longer. And I think if Bieniemy will step up once he's gone, I think that's a perfect match for him. Very familiar, clearly. I think that's like the best option for him. I think staying where he's at and being patient, I think he will get an opportunity eventually. But at the same time, I think we have to actually look at the teams that were hiring head coaches and what their situations were. And I don't think they were necessarily looking for a Bieniemy type coach. I think they were looking for someone who's willing to stay for either a rebuild or some time to wait, I think, before they actually were contenders. I think Bieniemy needs to go to a team that's a contender right away.
Yeah, and I actually kind of want to build off that, Roman, because I think there's a high possibility. I know there's some rumors out there that maybe he doesn't interview well, he didn't interview well, but I think maybe he was just like, I mean, he looks at a guy like maybe Adam Gase, who was like this hot shot offensive coordinator and then goes to a couple crappy situations, and now he's the clown of football, right? Maybe he looks at that and he's like, would I rather get paid a little more money and be a head coach, or would I rather stick around and be the offensive coordinator for the greatest offense, definitely the greatest offense right now, and maybe one of the greatest offenses of all time, and just do it that way. So I think that's a high possibility that he was just like, yeah, I'm content being with Mahomes, being with Kelsey, being with Hill, and I don't really want to go to a crappy situation like a Houston or sorry guys like a Detroit or like a Jacksonville or whatever. Maybe I want to just hang out in Kansas City, and either wait for the right opportunity for another team, wait for Andy Reid to retire, or maybe just be like, I'm content being an OC for the rest of my life and being with Patrick Mahomes for the next 2 decades. Barring any injuries, it seems like Mahomes is going to be there for a really long time. So I'm glad we talked about that, though, because like I said, I don't remember the last time, because Bieniemy was like the name, right? We were talking about him. I feel like mid-season we were talking about him getting some head coaching jobs, and it's very rare that the top name doesn't end up with at least one coaching, filling one of the coaching vacancies. So that was very surprising. I wanted to get your guys' thoughts, and I'm glad we had that good conversation. But we'll jump into now to the guys who actually did get hired. Starting with David Culley, who was the last guy to hire, as Roman mentioned. He was previously the assistant head coach on the Baltimore Ravens last season. He was there for 2 or 3 years, I believe. Not the sexiest name in the world, but Chris, what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, you could tell this was the last coaching hire of the 7, because this is clearly, I mean, I don't know about, I wouldn't say the worst, but the least interesting hire on this list. I mean, I think Houston, I mean, it's just fitting. This is a dumpster fire of a franchise right now. I would say maybe, if not the worst, one of them. I would say the worst franchise in the league as of this moment. Currently with all the tumult going on with Deshaun Watson saying he's our quarterback, but the guy has absolutely no interest in being here, and for very good reason. They have nothing desirable about this team. I think Culley is, I mean, he's getting hired from a good organization, but I don't really know a ton. I mean, I'd say I know the least amount about him on this entire list. I mean, he's just another name, another faceless name to me. And I'm going to go ahead and put him at number 7 on my spot, because I don't think he's very good. Or, I mean, I don't think he's going to be very good, especially with the situation, at least.
I think this hire looks even worse, considering that they were the last team to make a hire. And then if they maybe stuck it out to maybe after the Super Bowl, they could have gotten a Todd Bowles or a Byron Leftwich. And I kind of wanted to bring this up as well, because I saw it on sports networks that maybe the hiring should not officially start until after the Super Bowl. So maybe those guys could actually get an opportunity, as opposed to coaching throughout the playoffs and not getting hired. So I think the fact that Houston actually were the last ones to hire a head coach and end up going with David Culley as opposed to a Bieniemy or a Bowles or literally anyone else, it's very concerning, and it looks bad on me, because my Houston prediction, it went completely downhill after that, and I don't want to be a part of that anymore. And I will have to agree with Chris and put this David Culley hire last.
Yeah, I feel bad, because Culley seems like a good guy. He might be a really good coach. But like you guys said, it's a really bad situation, and it is a little concerning. We had a lot of rumors, a lot of reasons why Watt wanted out and why Watson still wants out of Houston is because there's a lot of puppetry there. There's a lot of the guys in the front office. I think it's Jack Easterby and not Nick Sirianni. I can't think of it. Yeah, him. A lot of manipulation there, and there's a lot of things that maybe Culley is just there to be like, he's just their puppet, and now that he's just going to listen to what they say. Maybe that's why they didn't go after a bigger name like a Leftwich or a Bowles, who might have been a better fit, or even a Bieniemy, even if Eric wasn't interested in it. So I agree with you guys. I think he's going to be number 7 on the list, which again is I feel like a little unfair. But I think it is the easy pick here that he is the last guy in terms of taking account experience, situation, everything. It would not surprise me if the Texans are looking for another head coach here in a year or two. So hopefully things turn around there for Houston, because it's been a really rough. I mean, they were like on the top of the sports world a few years ago, right? Astros are World Series champs. They got James Harden. The Texans, they got Deshaun Watson. They're a good team. I mean, one calendar year ago, the Texans were in the AFC divisional round, up 24 points against the eventual Super Bowl champion Chiefs. And now they don't have J.J. Watt. They're about to lose Watson. They have just a huge mess there. Just really tough for Texans fans as well as just Houston fans in general. But we'll jump in now to the next guy on the list. Brandon Staley, who was the defensive coordinator for the Rams, goes over to the other LA team and is now the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers. This was a name that was a little bit rumored to going to the Lions. The Chargers were heavy in the Bieniemy sweepstakes. It sounded like it seemed like they were most likely going to go offensive head coach, but they instead elected to go to defensive-minded guy. So Roman, since Chris started the last guy, I'll start you here with Brandon Staley. What are your thoughts on the hire?
I do like the hire, and as you said, this was a guy that the Lions were considering after they hired Brad Holmes as GM. Anyone who gets to work with that LA defense is going to be coveted as a head coach, and I think he brought in some nice guys in his coaching staff. I will say that his offensive coordinator was Joe Lombardi, and as us Lions fans know, that did not go very well. So that could be a knock. I'm not going to knock it against him, though. I think when you have Herbert, I think it'll be a good place to be. They're going to be good. I think they have a few more years until they actually contend, but they might make the playoffs. We'll see. I like the hire, and I'm going to rank it pretty high. I'm going to give it a 4 on the scale. Because I think the guy that the Lions wanted. I think this is an upcoming head coach, and I think he'll do good things.
Yeah, I'm right in lockstep with Roman here. I think this is the 4th most interesting hire of the offseason as well. I think for me, it's I actually think they can be competitive right away. I mean, this is a defense that comes ready-made. I think this is a perfect spot for a brand new head coach. He's got a quarterback already. Their defense is, I mean, when healthy, elite, I would say. And the problem is they just haven't been healthy. So hopefully maybe he can figure out why that is and get it turned around. But yeah, Joe Lombardi, not my favorite hire, but we'll have to see how that goes as well. I mean, I trust that Justin Herbert will. I mean, I don't think Anthony Lynn is the best offensive mind in the world either. So, I think I trust Justin Herbert with that offense. I think they have the weapons to get it done. They got some draft capital this year to improve the team as well. I think the Chargers can be really competitive in this division right away. We'll have to see how competitive that is, whether it's Chiefs level competitive or just trying to make a wild card spot remains to be seen. But it's definitely a roster with the talent to get it done. Not a lot of change going into next year besides the coaching staff as well. So it's, like I said, a really good situation for Staley to be in. Definitely smart by him to take this job over the Detroit job, in my opinion, because it's just a much more desirable position. I'm not trying to be, and maybe I'm hurting some feelings here, but it's just the truth, objective truth, that this is a much better situation for a brand new head coach to be in. And we'll have to see what he does with it, man. I think it's an interesting hire for sure.
I mean, if you're deciding between 2 young quarterbacks and Jared Goff or Justin Herbert, I'm taking Jared Goff every day of the week. So that's how I feel about that, Chris.
All
Just
right.
kidding. I'm just kidding. All right. So I agree with most of your guys' takes, though, on Staley. I was surprised by the hire because it seemed like the Chargers were going to go offensive-minded head coach throughout the process, and then it was like Staley was going to come to the Lions, and then like an hour later, it was he's going to the Chargers now. So a little surprising there, but I do like it. I mean, he was a guy who I think was coaching at a junior college or a high school in like 2016, and now he's the head coach of an NFL team. So really meteoric rise for Staley. And he's going to have a really good defense there to work with. They've had some injuries in the past, but having James, having Bosa there, it gives them a really good foundation to build off of. I am a little concerned, though, about the Lombardi offensive coordinator hire, and I am concerned that Staley isn't an offensive-minded head coach, because with a young quarterback like Herbert, we've seen in the past where offensive coordinators, if they do good, they're going to get hired as head coaches elsewhere, and then you have to bring another offensive coordinator. So that's my concern with young quarterbacks, is where it might just be a carousel, revolving door of offensive coordinators for Justin Herbert there. But overall, I do like the hire. I am a little bit lower on it. I'm going to go number 5 on my list, but I agree with most of your guys' takes there, and that's why I only have him 1 spot lower. So not too big of a difference there. But yeah, I still think overall a pretty solid hire. But unless anybody else has any other thoughts on Staley, we'll move on to the next man here, Arthur Smith, another guy that was heavily rumored to go to the Lions, and then I think he canceled his follow-up interview, and then wound up with the Falcons. He, of course, was the OC for the Tennessee Titans last season, which was one of the best offenses in the league. I think they were top 5. Ryan Tannehill rejuvenated his career under the guidance of Arthur Smith, as well as Derrick Henry was the rushing champ, 2 years in a row. So did a lot of good things with Tennessee, and now he gets another chance with another decent offense in Atlanta. But Chris, what do you think about the Smith hire?
Yeah, I really like the Arthur Smith hire. I'm gonna put him at the 3 spot for me. I think Smith, I think this year is gonna be kind of a lost year for them because they still have Matt Ryan, they still have Julio Jones. I think it's gonna take a little while to get their footing and for them to be competitive in this division. We'll have to see. Maybe him coming in, he finds the strengths of Matt Ryan. I mean, he did it with Tannehill. He basically helped rejuvenate his career, and And I think that was a mutual relationship between that. I think Tannehill improved, and I think Smith was a big part of that as well. So I think there's a chance Matt Ryan could end up being really good this year. He's got the weapons. They have a really good offense still in terms of passing game. They don't have a running game, though, which is going to be very interesting. I think they're going to be definitely in the market to draft Najee Harris, Travis Etienne. I think it's a very desirable. They don't really have much cap space, so it's probably not going to be a free agent destination unless maybe they go after like a Chris Carson, who is rumored to maybe be a free agent. Probably won't break the bank, but a guy that could be a good piece for that offense. Defensively, though, they don't have a lot of tools on the defensive side, so I think that's going to be more of a project. They're going to have to use a lot of draft capital there. They're going to have to make some big signings on the defensive side of the ball. But overall, I mean, I think the hire is extremely interesting because I think Smith brings a fresh energy to this team that was just lost, and it's been kind of the same cycle since the Super Bowl hangover of the 28-3 painful loss they've had. They really haven't had a lot going for them. So I think bringing in a guy like Smith, a guy that's proven successful on the offensive side of the ball, is perfect for a team that's really struggled in the red zone lately. But I also don't think they're going to be very good this year. So I think it's going to be more of a futures excitement than just going into this year.
It's an interesting hire for sure, but the big question mark is obviously he had success because of Derrick Henry, and he's not going to have that kind of player in Atlanta. Another big flag for me is that he has Ryan and he has Julio. I think his best chance to win would be this year or the next year. But if they go full rebuild mode, I think it's going to be a lost cause, a lost hire for Arthur Smith. I do think he has some good knowledge on all the offensive scheme and stuff. So I do think they're going to be better in that sense. But at the end of the day, it's a really tricky situation because if he has one bad year, I think they could possibly blow the whole thing up. And so for that reason, I'm going to put him at 5 because I think it's a pretty dangerous situation. I think that if he were to get one bad year, they blow the whole thing up, it'll be hard to recover. I don't think that's the reason he wanted to go to Atlanta. He has weapons such as Ryan and Julio. So if they're not performing well and if they lose and they rebuild, I think it's going to be a weird era for him.
Yeah, if they rebuild, I agree with you there, Roman. It's going to be really tough for Smith to find success. But by all accounts, is he took the job with the promise that wasn't going to be the case. That they were going to be doing more of a retooling instead of a full-on rebuild. And that's all the reports out of Atlanta seem to say the same thing. And that offense, I mean, they get some sort of running back that's better than Todd Gurley. They have a really solid offense there with Ridley, with Julio, with Matt Ryan, with Hayden Hurst. They got a really solid offense. I know, Chris, you mentioned it there, they are stuck in terms of cap. But if they can just get some defensive players and they can be just at least a league average defense, even if it's slightly below average, if they're just a decent defense, I think Smith is going to help this offense find another gear. And I think they're going to be a solid team in the NFC South, where the Bucs, who are obviously the clear-cut number one team in that division. But then it's just a lot of question marks there with the Saints and their cap troubles. Who's going to be quarterback? What's going to happen there? Is Drew Brees coming back? He still hasn't announced his retirement. The Panthers, I think right now on paper, unless the Panthers swing at Deshaun Watson, I think the Falcons are a better team than the Panthers. I think this is a legitimate wild card team if they address some of the issues on the defensive side of the football. And I don't know. I just like this team. I think it was a really good hire. I think the similar thing that we were talking about last year, I'm putting in him at number 2 on my list. I'm a little bit higher than on Chris, a lot higher on him than Roman, just because I think this could be a very similar situation to what we saw with Tennessee just a couple of years ago, where they were not a good team, or even last year. I mean, we had them all out of the playoffs, and they were one of the best teams in the NFL. Yeah, they kind of crapped out in the postseason, but they were still a really good team. And I think he can help this offense find another gear if they can just address some of those issues on the defensive side of the ball. And even last year, I know they were only a 5-win team, but I think a lot of statistics have them as like the greatest bad team of all time. I mean, a lot of their games came down to the stretch. They were one-score games. If you look at the Detroit game, the Kansas City game, they were in a lot of these games, and they just couldn't find a way to win it. So I think if Smith is able to alter some of those losses into wins, I think the talent's there, and they could be a really solid team. And overall, I think it's a really good hire. But do you guys have anything else you want to add before we jump into the next one?
Now let's jump into the next one.
All right. I'm glad we disagreed there. We were pretty much in lockstep for the most part on the first two guys, but Smith, we had some disagreement. But I think this guy we're going to have probably all in the same spot. Nick Sirianni was the offensive coordinator for the Colts last year. And now he enters his first head coaching gig with the Philadelphia Eagles. He, of course, did not have a great press conference, to say the least. He looked very, very nervous, kept saying the same things over and over again. But Roman, what did you think about the hire overall?
I think they hired the one person who could fix Carson Wentz, but the problem is they might not actually have Carson Wentz. So I think that's very problematic, I guess you could say. Coming from the Reich tree, I think it's a good hire, though. I mean, no matter who they have as quarterback, or no matter who they have in offense, I think they might actually trade Zach Ertz, from what I've hearing
Yep.
too. It's interesting. I don't think he's going to be the worst hire in the world. It was just another kind of name that came out of nowhere, because they were also one of the last teams to hire a coach. I think we're all going to put him at 6, though. I don't, nothing against the guy, but I think he's just going to be in a rough situation.
See, I have him at 6, but I don't think this is that rough of a situation, if we're being honest. I mean, this is a roster that's been a playoff roster for the last 3 of the last 4 seasons, just won a Super Bowl 4 years ago. They still have a lot of players from that roster that are very talented. And I think, if they can trade Wentz for a couple picks, I think they could end up retooling this roster and being competitive in what's easily the worst division in football. You have to remember that as well. I mean, Sirianni, it's not a sexy hire. I mean, he does come from a good coaching tree. They obviously had massive success with Reich before. So, obviously his press conference did not go well at all. It was a very bang-up job for his opening press conference. But at the same time, maybe he's a little bit nervous, doesn't see the spotlight as much. Can't fault his coaching techniques just based on his opening press conference. Maybe, it could have been a number of things with that. But for me, it's going to really come down to what he does at the quarterback position. I think he should move on with Jalen Hurts. Showed flashes last year, wasn't perfect, but at the same time, showed some flashes as a rookie. And I was looking up, so I saw a tweet that he had actually in his first 4 games had better rookie. I know people were trashing him for poor accuracy and stuff. He had a enormously better stats, I believe, than Russell Wilson even in his first 4 games as a rookie. So isn't a guy that you should definitely write off or anything. Be like, oh yeah, they definitely need to draft a quarterback because Jalen Hurts is so inaccurate. I don't think that's the case. I think he's a good quarterback. I think he's a guy they could build on, but they need to add some weapons on the offensive side of the ball, and I think that's what they're going to do with that early pick. If they get another first rounder, they could go after a defensive player. They're going to lose some caps. I think Ertz is definitely gone. And I think Wentz is definitely gone to the high. They should have a little bit of cap space at some point. They can make some moves in the defensive side of the ball. I actually think the Eagles can be ready to win if they make the right moves. It really depends. But still have them at 6. Don't really kind of similar to Coley. I don't know a ton about him. Maybe this could have been a destination for Bieniemy to take over, and people will be a lot more interested. But we'll have to see how it works out for him.
Yeah, I think this is going to blow up in the Eagles' face. I think this is
Wow.
an awful hire. So I like your positivity there, Chris. I don't have him at 7 just because I think the upside is there for a lot of the reasons that you just outlined. Chris, however, I mean, just look at he's just got so much stuff stacking up against him. And I don't think it's more so because he's a bad coach. I think it's just because of the situation. I mean, the Eagles, we mentioned earlier with Carson Wentz, there's tons of drama there. Howie Roseman, he's their GM. Very similar to Cully. It seems like Sirianni is more just a puppet for the front office to kind of manipulate. Reportedly, that's why Peterson left, because they had a lot of clashing of egos, clashing of heads. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. Sirianni, yes, he was the offensive coordinator with the Colts, but I believe Frank Reich calls most of the play calls, does most of the work there with Indy. So I'm not sure how much Sirianni was actually doing. Maybe he was doing a ton. Maybe he'll be a great coach, but maybe he was doing nothing. Maybe he was just hanging out with the right guys and Frank Reich, and then he got a head coaching job. So he just seems like, and then you go to the press conference. I know it was just one press conference, but he just doesn't seem prepared. He doesn't seem to prepared to handle any media market, but Philadelphia, I mean, that is just a nightmare scenario. I mean, they just won a Super Bowl a couple years ago, and they are just going after Peterson. They're going after Wentz. They're going after everybody regardless. That is a brutal media market. It's right up there with New York in terms of, in my opinion, in terms of putting pressure on players and coaches and everyone involved in the team. And I think they are going to eat up Sirianni alive and spit him out, and this guy's going to be fired within 2 to 3 years. I would be more than happy to be wrong about that, because for all the positive things you outlined there, Chris, and obviously, I don't like seeing guys get fired. He seems like a really nice guy. I'd love for him to prove me wrong. I'd love for him to figure things out. Him and Jalen Hurts get a really good connection there, and it works out great. But when you take into account everything, it just seems like this is doomed to fail. This is just it's prime example for just another implosion. But he does have the benefit of being in a relatively weak division, especially if the Cowboys can't re-sign Dak. That leaves this division really wide open. So I don't know. I'm definitely very negative on it, but I do see the potential there. That's why I have it at number 6. Because Cully, I think it's very, very low ceiling, and at least with Sirianni, I can see the potential. But unless anybody else has anything to add, I know I was really negative there, but we'll jump into a positive one, and that's Robert Saleh, who signed with the New York Jets as their new coach. I feel like I'm saying with all these guys, except Sirianni, is he was another guy that was heavily rumored to go to the Lions, but ultimately went to the Jets, and then reportedly, from what I saw, I think the Lions were like his third option because I think he also was interested in going to Jacksonville as well. So that's a little shot in the gut for Lions fans. The Detroit native doesn't even want to. We don't even crack his top 2, but who cares, Robert? We don't even want you here. We got MC. We'll get into him in a second. But anyway, sticking with Saleh, he was of course the defensive coordinator for the Niners last season. He was almost got a head coaching job last offseason. Stuck around with San Francisco another year. Did a really good job again, especially considering all the injuries they had with Bosa and everybody. So overall, it's a good hire. I feel like we might all have him in the same spot, but I'm interested to see here. So, Chris, how about you start us off here?
Yeah, so I have Saleh at the number 2 spot. I think he's an extremely interesting hire for sure. I think overall for the Jets, I think they have a lot of moves to be made for them personally. I think there's a lot they can do this offseason. They have a ton of cap space. They have a ton of draft capital. I'm really interested to see what direction they go. I think this is another team similarly to the Eagles, maybe even more so, where the quarterback, whatever they do at the quarterback position is going to end up determining how this ends up going with Saleh, because I think they could stick with Darnold for a year. They could see how it goes with him. They could sign some veteran as well, maybe to start over him. I think that's a possibility. They could go after Deshaun Watson. They could end up making a late push for a guy like Wentz or Jimmy G or something like that. Or they could draft one. And I think there's so many options that they almost can't mess that up. So it's going to be really interesting to see what they do with that. They have some offensive talent as well, in the making at least. And Denzel Mims, I think he's going to take a big boost from this hire, especially because I'm expecting them to go elsewhere at the quarterback position, and it's almost automatically going to be an upgrade from Sam Darnold. But again, a lot of cap space, a lot of holes on the roster to fix. I think Saleh for this year, they're not going to be very good. I expect this to be a 4 or 5-win team at best, but that could change with a couple big moves there if they end up signing or they trade for a Watson or something like that. But I think Saleh is going to bring good energy on both sides of the ball. His players are going to be very interested to play for him. And then I also think their defense is going to be pretty good eventually once they can get the right pieces in, because he's been a good defensive mind throughout his career. He's had a long history of turning bad defenses into good defenses. So I think he knows a lot on that side of the ball in terms of scheme as well. So I think he'll put his players in the best situations, similarly to what he did in San Francisco and made them so successful. So I think this is an A, if not an A plus, an A higher for the Jets. Almost best case scenario for Jets fans. So I think you guys should be very happy with getting Saleh into New York.
Yes, and that is why Robert Saleh will be my number 1 on the ranking, because he was obviously the most coveted head coach from the pro ranks, I guess you could say. I had to do a double take when I saw that he signed with the Jets. I'm like, Jets? He chose the Jets over the Lions? What's up with that?
It's pretty smart, man. They got a lot of draft capital and cap space. It was the more desirable job for sure.
I personally felt a little offended, to be honest. But other than that, I think it's going to be interesting, though, because he has Darnold. He could stick with him. And I don't think Saleh is necessarily the head coach to take on a rookie quarterback. But I do give him a benefit of the doubt because he did bring in Mike LaFleur as his offensive coordinator, brother of Matt LaFleur, head coach of the Packers. And Mike LaFleur was another coveted coordinator, eventually going to be a head coach. I expect him to be out in the Shanahan offense. So I think whether they have Darnold or they get a Fields or Wilson, I think they'll be set on that side of the ball. And obviously, like you said, Chris, they need a few more weapons, preferably more wide receivers. They might even go running back. I wouldn't be surprised.
They need one.
They can go Najee Harris with their second first rounder, but I think it's the best hire of the offseason. I do think it'll pay big dividends down the line. I think it's a clear number one. I think there's a huge gap between Saleh and
Oh wow.
number two ranked.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Roman. I know I just trashed him and how I said how the Lions, we don't even want you here, but that's just because I was bitter. Because I think he was the best coach on the market, and I think he's in a great situation there with the Jets. Like you said, Chris, they got cap space, they got draft picks, they can really do whatever they want at the quarterback position. They can stick with Darnold, maybe LaFleur can unlock him. And I mean, he was in a really bad situation his first few seasons. So maybe now with Darnold in a better situation, maybe he figures it out. They could draft Justin Fields. They could trade down. They could get another guy. They could trade for Watson. They could do so many different things. It's just a really great situation. And their defense, like they got some pieces. Like it wasn't good last year, but it wasn't like awful, right? I mean, they got some guys. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if this is a decent defense. And I know you said, Chris, I think you said what they get 5 or 6 wins. That's very likely. I could see this team being a 7, maybe even 8-win team, especially if Saleh is as good of a motivator and just overall great leader of men guy that he was with San Francisco. If he can do that with New York, I think it's be really great for a team that's been in a just absolute dumpster fire ever since what they made the AFC Championship game with Rex Ryan like a decade ago. That was their last highlight, and they've just been an absolute just awful place to play in the last few years. It's really nice to see them to get better. I do have the same concern as I do with Staley, where with a young quarterback, the offensive coordinator will keep revolving, assuming LaFleur is good. Maybe it's head coaching job somewhere else. They have to bring a new guy in. That's not great for continuity purposes, but not a huge big deal, I don't think. I still think Saleh is a really, really good hire. That's why he's got my number one spot. I'm really interested to see now who, Chris, you have as your number one guy, because these next two guys, obviously, as you can see in my rankings, I have a little bit lower. So I'm sure we're going to have some good conversations. But next up, we have Mr. MCDC, Motor City Dan Campbell himself, signing with the Detroit Lions. I think this was the guy that a lot of people went, who, when the Lions signed him? And now he's probably the most talked about coaching hire of any coaching hire in terms of national media, just because of his now infamous press conference where he was biting kneecaps and doing a bunch of crazy stuff. It was just super intense and super just crazy. And it was really entertaining to watch. But it seems like a very controversial press conference. Some people are happy about it. Some people aren't happy about it. So I'm interested to see what you guys think. But Campbell, of course, was previously the assistant head coach with the New Orleans Saints under Sean Payton. But I think, Chris, it's your turn to start. No, Chris, you started Saleh. So, Roman, how about you start us off here with Mr. Dan Campbell?
I will add that Campbell is actually the only hire who has pro head coaching experience. He was an interim for the Dolphins quite a while back. So I think that has some benefits to him. However, like we kind of mentioned, a name that kind of came out of nowhere, I guess you could say, wasn't necessarily on the radar at first. But after learning more about him, learning from where he's come from, I don't want to be a homer here, but I will put him at 3. I think what's benefiting him really is his staff that he brought in. Anthony Lynn, offensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn, defensive coordinator, all guys that I think are well respected in the league. And he even brought in a ton of former players as well, like Mark Brunell, Antoine Randall, quite a few more. I think it's going to be a good hire. I think when his press conference, it was good to hear, even though he said biting people's kneecaps off. I personally enjoyed it. I know a lot of people didn't, but I think his compatibility with our new GM, Brett Holmes, I think that's also a huge plus. And I think he's going to be able to get the job done. And whatever the timeline is, I'm not going to assume what the timeline would be. I like the hire, and I think it's going to be it's underrated for sure. I think it'll probably be one of the better ones of the class, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I mean, I have him at 5. It's not because of a lack of interest with him personally. It's just I'm concerned that he isn't going to really be coaching very much, I guess, if that makes sense. He's kind of like Robert Saleh, but without like any X's and O's to me. I mean, it's not a guy. This by no means is I'm trashing him for the Lions for taking him. It's he's hired in a good staff as well, so I think that's a big interest. I think it's one of the more interesting hires of the offseason. I think there's definitely a ceiling to it, but I don't know how much of that is going to be just because he's a good coach or whatever. Is what I'm saying. Kind of that's why I have him lower on my list than you guys both do. But for me, Campbell, I'm expecting him to come in and make an interesting culture change with them, similarly to a guy like Saleh. I think he's going to be – people are going to want to play for him. It's just – it's a very much less desirable job in my opinion. I think he's in a much worse situation. I don't think the Lions have a whole lot of talent on either side of the ball. They also don't have as much draft capital. Now they do, but they also don't have really a quarterback anymore. So it's going to be really interesting to see what they end up doing. It's a clear rebuilding situation. They aren't going to be good for a couple of years. They're probably going to be fourth in the division by at least a couple games for the next 2 to 3 seasons. But after that, the light's at the end of the tunnel. And as a Lions fan, I don't hate the hire at all. I think there's a big gap between him and Sirianni here. I know I was a little bit more optimistic about Sirianni, but I feel a lot better about Campbell than I do about him. And I think he's a lot closer to a guy like Staley. Maybe if we redid the list, I would have him ahead of Staley in terms of, what I think about the hire. So I think it's better than where I have him on the list is what I would say. But I do like the hire.
I'm sorry, Drew. I'm going to cut you off real quick. I just want to mention that I understand what you're meaning by that. I don't know how much coaching he actually will do, but I think there's some good positives of him at least being the head coach, as in he was attractive to all these other coaches that we've assembled for staff who will actually do a good job, I think. So I think you can't look at this hire as just him. I think you have to look at it from him and all of the people he's brought in, because I think he's willing to ask for help. He's willing to acknowledge that he doesn't know everything. That's why he brought in so many players. And even on the front office side of the ball, the Lions are on the offensive side, front office side, the Lions brought in some big names, such as I'm drawing a blank now, but the former GM of the Chiefs, John Dorsey. They brought in John Dorsey. They brought in a bunch of other front office guys to help out with Brett Holmes. So I think the Lions are assembling a great staff, an all-star staff of head coaching and front office people. So I know for the other teams we didn't look at it like that, but I think for the Lions especially, you have to look at it as the entirety. And I think that's why Campbell should be ranked so high up.
Yeah, I agree with most of your points there, Roman. That's why I have him also at number 3. I think with this, there's no world where Dan Campbell, the situation is mediocre, right? I think this is either going to work tremendously and we're just amazing, and he's the guy that gets us to the promised land. He's our Kevin Stefanski that corrected the Browns. He's our guy, right? He's a beautiful man, or he just blows up in our face. We're just back-to-back 3 to 4 win seasons, and he's out of town here in a year or two. I do like the fact that they signed him for 6 years, which makes it sound like that they are willing to make a commitment. He's willing to make a commitment.
They're going to be bad the next couple of years. I don't think there's any chance he's going to be out of here in 1 to 2 years. Well, this isn't a Matt Patricia situation where he's coming in with a ready-made roster. This roster sucks. Let's be real.
I guess what I meant with by bad is they might lose. They might only win 3 or 4 games, but the culture, the atmosphere, it's good. It's not like Patricia. That's what I meant.
Yeah,
that's what I meant by being bad. It doesn't work. I guess that's what I meant.
Right.
Even though this is a whole different conversation. I don't think they're going to be as bad as you're making them out to be. And I think
I've been saying that too. Don't worry.
I think Jared Goff, man. I've been watching some tape. I mean, you don't make it to a Super Bowl if you have 0 talent. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. And we can talk about that in our Lions deep dive later in the offseason, but we're not going to talk about it right now. Let's talk about Dan Campbell. And I do really like the staff he brought in, like Roman mentioned. He's maybe a kind of a crazy guy, but we need that, right? We need some juice. We need some positive attitude. It seems like he's going to bring that. I am a little concerned because it seems like maybe they just did a complete 180. They went from a purely X's and O's smart guy in Patricia with 0 personality or a bad personality to Campbell, no X's and O's, but a great leader of men, great personality. A little concerned about that, but overall, the fact that how good his staff was really makes me feel more confident in the hire. Anthony Lynn, too, I know we trashed him on this show throughout the year. I don't think we ever criticized his scheming. I mean, look at Justin Herbert. He was a good quarterback under him. We always criticize his head coaching abilities, his time management, his timeouts. What is he doing? Fortunately, that's probably all Dan Campbell's going to have to worry about if he's not calling plays or anything like that. So Campbell can focus on that. And we got Anthony Lynn's great mind. I think it works out. I think Glenn's a really good DC hire as well. I think things are definitely trending in the right direction for the Lions. And I wasn't super I was like, who's this guy when they hired him? I'll be honest, but I'm liking it a lot more and more. I think I almost put him at number 2. But I think I like Smith a little bit more just because of his experience. But I still think Campbell's a really, really good hire. And I think the Lions are trending in the right direction, which is something we couldn't say really forever. So, yeah, Chris, it looks like you wanted. Did you want to add something before?
I mean, I don't get this optimism with how they're going to be next year because they don't have a whole
Okay.
lot of talent on either side of the ball. They're going to make some. They're going to make some cuts. They don't have a lot of other shrewd moves they can make to be good now. I think it's going to be more of a process. They got these extra 2 first-round picks. I think those are going to help them down the line. Maybe, possibly not this year. Next year they could be a little bit better. I think they're going to show massive improvements by year 3. And then it's either we're gonna figure out whether or not Dan Campbell is the guy for the job. But I think I don't want to give him too much credit for his staff hires, but I also don't want to. I'm not going to take that away from him as well. That's kind of why I have him at the 5 spot. I think in terms of his overall coaching ability, I don't think it's there on the level of some of these. Staley. Staley's a great defensive mind. Saleh's a great defensive mind. Smith a great offensive mind. I think Campbell, he's got the leadership of Saleh, but he doesn't have the X's and O's. That's why I have him behind all 3 of those, but ahead of guys with the zero person. Or I mean, I don't know about Culley, but at least Sirianni shows zero personality in his opening press conference, but might have the X's and O's. We'll have to see about that.
Yeah, what I mean by they're not going to be as bad is I'm saying they're going to win like 6 or 7 games instead of like 3 or 4.
So I think too, man.
No, this year I said they were going to win 9 games and make the playoffs.
Yeah.
So I'm not. That's why I think that's realistic. I think if they win 5 to 7 games and they're not like they sneak some wins here, maybe Goff still's got a little bit more in the tank. I think their offense is going to be good. But again, we're not talking about this right now. We'll talk about it later because we could spend 45 minutes on a Lions deep dive just in general. But we'll conclude it here with our final pick. Obviously, it's pretty obvious because we each only have 1 spot where we each ranked him. It's Urban Meyer. Last year, he was on the Fox Sports college football coverage. But of course, his last coaching experience was in college. He was Ohio State's coach. And prior to that, he was also Florida's head coach. A lot of college experience. This is his first NFL job, I believe, in any capacity. So it's a really interesting hire. That's why we saved it for last. And it's nice to see that we differ on it at least a little bit. So, Chris, I'll have you start off here on our final coaching hire in Urban Meyer.
Yeah, I mean, you see where I have him on the list. I got him in my number 1 spot, and I think there are a few reasons that I have him over a guy like Saleh. And I think it's a riskier hire than Saleh, in my opinion. I would say Saleh is the safer pick. I think he's got a better chance to get them to the playoffs quicker. But I think Meyer's upside is just. I think it's untapped with anybody else on this list, in my opinion. I think he's going into a good situation with the Jacksonville Jaguars. They have a ton of draft capital. And unlike the Jets, I think they have some talent that people don't realize on this roster, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They have some young players that they can build around. A Josh Allen, a Miles Jack, a C.J. Henderson, guys like that have been pretty good pieces for this defense. They also have, DJ Chark on the offensive side of the ball, James Robinson. So he's coming into a ready-made situation, in my opinion. Pair that with the draft capital, getting a potential generational talent quarterback and one of the best prospects we've had in Trevor Lawrence at 1 is going to make a big difference. So I think Meyer in that regard he's set up for success, but that's not why I have him at the number 1 spot. I think Meyer is a offensive guru, and I think he's going to instantly bring more of a college offense approach rather than, their 1970s offense they've had for the last 10 years or whatever, played a lot of defensive. At least when they were good, it was mostly just, run the ball, play defense. I think this offense is going to be high octane right away. I think they have a ton of cap space. A guy that I'd like them to bring in, and this isn't going to change where I have him ranked, is Curtis Samuel. I think bringing him, he's a free agent, a guy that they could probably get in a reasonable deal, despite he did have a very good season, so his price tag might have went up a little bit. But I think Urban Meyer, that's a perfect guy to add to the system. They do already have Laviska Shenault, which he's a very, a guy you can move around the formation a lot. So maybe they don't need Samuel, but another guy they can just do a lot of things with, give him handoffs, throw him screens and stuff like that. But pair him with DJ Chark, pair him with the potential reunion with Allen Robinson. This offense could be absolutely electric year 1, in my opinion. And not to mention they got plenty of draft capital to go defensive and cap as well to go defensive minded as well. So I think this roster could be ready to compete as soon as this season, if not, this year, next year as well. But I think Meyer really brings a new energy. I think he's going to run it like a college program personally in terms of what he wants to do with his offense. And I'm super interested with the hire, man. I don't know what it is. I know obviously Drew's got him a lot lower. Roman's got him at 2. So he definitely agrees with at least some of what I'm saying, but I am insanely interested with this hire. And I think it's an A+ hire of A+ hires, in my opinion, to get him out of retirement and bring him in. I'm in love with it, man. I don't know what it is.
I don't think anyone is denying the talent on Jacksonville's roster. I think they would be set with whoever coach they got, also the cap room and the first overall pick. And obviously Meyer has been a winner everywhere he's gone, from Florida to Ohio State, and I think Utah before, even before that. So I think you can't deny that he's a winner, but obviously he's not going to win right away. So I don't know how he's going to deal with losing at first. I don't know what their timeline is, because as we've seen, Meyer kind of dips when things go wrong. So I don't know how long he's expecting to be with Jacksonville. He could leave literally at any point. So it's a weird situation. And obviously, he hasn't even coached a game yet, and things went completely south the other day when they brought in Chris Doyle as strength and conditioning coach, who was fired from Iowa for saying racist things to at least like 50 athletes or whatever. So they hired and fired him within the span of a day. So that obviously doesn't bode well for him and his judgment, I guess you could say. They do have oh my gosh, the former offensive coordinator for the Lions, Bevel. I don't know what I'm doing with names today, but I think that's an interesting hire as well. He'll be a nice pairing with Lawrence, as I assume he'll go first overall. So I was reluctant to put Urban Meyer at number 2 just because of all his controversy, because he follows him wherever he goes. And I actually don't think he'll be in the Jacksonville head coaching position for the long haul. So they have to kind of win right away, I think, for his timetable to actually make it worth a hire. And I think he'll be there for like maybe 3-4 years tops. I don't know if he'll stay longer than that, considering his health conditions as well. It's going to be a great hire or an absolute bust, and I think it's going to be trending towards a bust hire.
Yeah, it's definitely trending towards a bust hire. Now, this isn't just me being Michigan football biased, right? Urban Meyer kicked Michigan's butt, 5 years? I mean, this is a stat for you. I think Michigan, so I'm 20 years old. Michigan's only beaten Ohio State, I think, 3 or 4 times in my lifetime. So that's brutal, and most of those came at the hand of Urban Meyer. So this isn't just my Michigan bias setting in. I think this is a good hire in the fact that it gives the Jaguars some much needed juice, right? It brings energy. Assuming because they're in Florida, so I'm assuming Jacksonville's going to have fans. They had fans last year. It's going to be people to buy tickets. When you got Urban Meyer as your head coach and Trevor Lawrence as your quarterback, from a marketing standpoint, this is A+ hire. But from an on-field standpoint, okay, again, this might be my Michigan bias showing, but it's easy to be a good coach when you're in college and you have all the best players and you're playing a bunch of guys who are going to be in finance or accounting next year, right? He's going against NFL football players. And Jacksonville, yes, I do agree, they have a lot of upside, especially if they get Trevor Lawrence. Maybe they have some cap space, they have some draft picks, maybe they make some moves on defense. But I think this team still tops out as an 8-win team at best. I think they're much more in the 5 to 6 range, maybe 7 wins too. 5 to 8 range, I think, is more reasonable. So they're going to lose a lot, and they're not going to be a playoff team, I don't think. And how is Urban going to handle that? I mean, as Roman said, he's a guy who, as soon as he loses, and as soon as things start to get a little hairy, he says, oh, he's got some sort of medical issue, or it's this, or it's that, or it's whatever, and he dips. And by all accounts, he doesn't handle losing well. He doesn't handle adversity well. A lot of things that have come out about Urban Meyer, and even as Roman said too, he's had the job for like a month, and he hasn't even coached a game, and he's already got a controversy thing where he hires some absolute awful person to be his strength and conditioning coach, and then he fires him 6 hours after he hired him because of the backlash. And it doesn't seem like he's handling the pressure, the questions. It's not like Ohio State, where he's Jesus Christ and he's the greatest guy to ever touch the earth. This is Jacksonville, man. This is the NFL. I don't think he's going to handle it. I think he's going to be out again, unless Trevor Lawrence is he's Tom Brady this year and they win 11 or 12 games and make the playoffs. I don't think Urban Meyer is going to handle it well, and I don't think he's going to be the coach for the long haul, just like Roman said. That's at least my take. And I don't think he's going to handle losing well. I don't think he handles adversity well, and I don't think it's going to end well. But Chris, you're shaking your head. I'm assuming you probably have some more takes.
I mean, look, obviously the strength and conditioning hire, not a great look, but the guy did resign. Meyer didn't actually fire him, so let's make sure we're getting our facts.
They resigned, but it was one of those hey, buddy, it's time for you to resign. That's what it was.
All right. Anyways, all right. But I'm not, not a great look. But I'm just talking. I think you're giving him too much crap personally. I mean, all the guy's done is win. So I really don't know how he handles losing because he doesn't really lose very often. So I know, yeah, obviously there was a lot of controversy behind the scenes at Ohio State, and some
In
of that was
Florida.
some of, yeah. He's been to a couple of programs where there's been some behind the scenes stuff, which I mean, maybe partly his fault, maybe not. I mean, it could just be other people in the organization. I'm not totally sure about all that, but for me, I really think on the field, I think right away, yeah, maybe they aren't fantastic year one, but I think at least by year two, this is a division that also could be wide open for the taking. It really could be. I think the Colts, they're good, but they still need a quarterback. Depends on how that works out. They lost their OC. Another thing that they're going to have to figure out. The Houston Texans obviously are going to be trash this year. They might not win a football game this year, in my opinion. They could be that bad if they lose Deshaun Watson. And also, the Titans not going to have Arthur Smith. We'll have to see how their offense responds to that as well. So some stuff in the air in this division. I think right away it gives them an opportunity to win. And like I said, that's really all he's done and throughout his entire coaching career is win football games. So, I mean, like you're saying that he doesn't take losing well, but he really doesn't do it very often. So I don't know if he takes it poorly or not. I mean, he's maybe some of the things you say about criticisms are fair where, if things get tough around the organization, he doesn't handle the controversy very well. So I do agree with you to that regard, but I think on the field right away, I think this team turns around. They have so much cap room, so many draft picks, some already rosterable talent. I really like, and I like the Bevel hire as well. I think he's a good coordinator to have, gives, Urban's college style offense. He's obviously going to implement a little bit of a pro feel as well with Bevel. He's been a good, ground and pound plus, air it out guy. So I like those two together. I think they're going to be able to create a really good offense. And I think it's for Jacksonville purposes, like you said, it helps with the marketing and stuff. I think that's part to do with it. It's a team that doesn't have a big fan base. They haven't been good very often for a lot. Like they've had no, they've had no, fluent success at all since I've been alive, pretty much. They've had a couple good years here and there. But I really think Meyer gives them, while there's a chance that things don't end well, I think he gives them the upside of continued success. And they're definitely not a laughing stock of the league anymore like they have been.
They could be, though. And I agree with you a lot there. That's why I have it at number 4, is because I believe in the upside, because I think there is definite upside, especially in comparison to some of the guys I have below him. But like Roman said, and like I said too, when things get tough, I know he doesn't lose a lot, but when things get tough, Urban bolts, and he's done it 2 or 3 times now already. Because I'm pretty sure there might have been some controversy at Utah too when he was there. I mean, this guy, controversy follows this guy, and like I said, he's had the job for a month, and there's already controversy. He hasn't even stepped on the field yet. So I don't know. I'm concerned there, and I would rather have the other guys than him. That's just my opinion.
I think it's not about whether he handles losing. I think it's just going to be the major factor of that. Urban Meyer is not going to be the top dog anymore. I mean, he's going to be working with players that are going to be paid more than him, and they're actually going to be paid millions of dollars, and especially older. That he's not playing or he's not coaching younger kids. Yeah. He's coaching men, and I think when these men have the platform to push back, to actually say something, to retaliate, I guess. I mean, I think Urban Meyer has to control the locker room day one. And I don't think this Doyle hire was a good move for that factor. So I think he's going to be working with players that, won't just buy in right away. It's not a college program. So I think that's going to be a lot to work with as well. And obviously no pro head coaching experience. That's obviously been a learning curve. And I think he's behind that already.
Yeah, and to Chris's point, I mean, you could look at a guy like Pete Carroll, who was in college, went to the NFL, and that worked great. Or you could look at, from my point of view, you could look at a guy like Nick Saban, who went to the NFL, blew up in his face, and then he went back to college. So I know everyone likes to talk about the college guys that don't transition, but there are some college guys that do transition. Even Jim Harbaugh, right? He was pretty good with San Francisco, and then some extenuating circumstances forced him to go back to college, but that really was out of his control. So it's not just the fact he's a college coach, just that with this guy, it just seems like there's a lot of stuff going on, and there's a lot of just uncertainty, I guess, because like you said, Chris, he hasn't lost. We don't know how he handles losing, and it's like I said, it's really easy to win when you're recruiting, when when your entire team is filled with NFL players, and like I said, you're playing a bunch of like finance majors or guys who are going to go communications or public relations guys. No offense, Roman. Those are the guys on the other side of the football, right? It's easy to win. And now when you're playing against men on men and you don't have as much talent as some of the other teams, quite frankly, it's going to be really interesting to see how he handles that. So, but that's why we saved him for last, because I think he, without a doubt, I think we all agree he is the most interesting,
Absolutely.
intriguing, entertaining, whether most controversial, whether it works out or it doesn't work out, it's going to be entertaining regardless. I think it's very similar. He's like Dan Campbell on steroids, right? I think Dan Campbell is very similar. If it blows up, it's going to be entertaining. If it doesn't blow up, it's going to be entertaining. I think Urban Meyer is that, just on another level. But we had a really good conversation there. Anything else you guys want to add about any of the coaching hires before we wrap everything up?
No, I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see how these. I mean, you're not going to know from just year. Well, you'll know some of the. I would say some of the better hires by year one, but you won't be able to write any of these guys off after 1 year. I think it's going to take a few years for all. I mean, they're. I mean, obviously, when you're going to a new team, most of these rosters aren't very good, so it's going to take a lot of retooling, rebuilding, and we'll have to see which guys come out on top, because there's definitely some risky hires here. There's some safe hires. There's some unknown. You got the whole mixed bag here. We'll have to see how it goes.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that. I am willing to write off David Culley, though. I will say that. Thank you.
I just don't know anything about him, so I'm not going to write him off. I'm writing off the organization more than anything. Maybe he comes in as is just a smashing success, and they're good. I think it's a possibility, but just because I don't know anything about him. But we'll have to see, man.
Yeah, so Roman kicked off the 2020 season by pronouncing his love for the Texans. Now he's starting off the 2021 season by being a complete Texans hater. So I like the heel turn here. I do agree with you guys, though. I think outside of Saleh, I think there's a lot of just unknowns, even with Culley, because it could work. You never know. But yeah, Saleh's the one. He's definitely the safest hire, because I think he's going to be good no matter what. But the other 6 guys, there's a wide range of outcomes that could happen for sure. But that'll be it for this episode. We're the Zone Defense Podcast once again. Even though the NFL season is over, we aren't taking a break. We have plenty of off-season content, including NFL draft coverage, free agency, trade news, as well as previews for the 2021 season. We teased the Lions one a little bit here. I'm really entertaining to do that one, because I know we're going to disagree on one Jared Goff, and that should be really entertaining. So look out for those. Those will probably be a few months from now. And Chris and I are also continuing our weekly Zone Defense basketball hours. We weren't able to do it last week, but we are going to try and do those once a week throughout the NBA season as well. So be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Spotify and Twitter, and at Zone Defense Pod, and search us on Apple Podcasts, just so you don't miss a thing. Smash that like button, as well as drop a comment down below. Let us know your list of your coaching hires. If you agree with, do you think Urban Meyer is going to be a bad hire? Do you think Urban Meyer is going to be a great hire? What are your thoughts on MCDC, Dan Campbell? We love reading all your comments, and we like to respond to all of them as quickly as we can. But thank you for listening to this episode, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.
See ya.